Hello, 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 hello. Happy Wednesday. I'm using a new setup today, and I am so excited to be here to tell you one of the things that I learned really late in my career. And one of them was key to my growth when I finally learned it. In addition, I also know now in hindsight that this strategy is something that, although people talk about it in broad terms, people who've been very successful often leave out, I don't know, intentionally or unintentionally, how important this has been to them achieving the place that they've actually achieved in their career. And so tonight we're going to talk about it. I'm going to spill the tea. So stay tuned to the end tonight to learn more about this particular strategy. So, before I tell you about this strategy, I want to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Crystal Harris, and I am a semi retired professor. Well, I'm fully retired, but since I retired about 6 months ago, I have relaunched my coaching practice, and I'm a career coach, which is one of the things that has inspired me to talk about tonight's topic and a lot of the things that I talk about. The name of my channel is Sabbatical Life with Dr. Crystal. And sabbatical life is really about taking time to pause and be intentional about putting in perspective the things that I learned and making sure that other people who are coming behind me are going to benefit from the things that I learned. I think that so much of what, although I would say that in general, my career was fraught with difficulties and complexities, some of which were because of um, systems that I didn't understand the impact of at the time that I was encountering them. But also, my career was often catapulted by things that people helped me with and told me to do or not to do. And so that's really what we're going to talk about. So I hate when there's a clickbait title like the one thing or the three things, and then they talk 10, 15 minutes before they tell you what that thing is. And so I'm going to tell you right now that the thing is investing in your relationship network, investing in your support network. And the reason why I think that is going to be the strategy for growth in the future is that as we begin to work more remote, hybrid, there is the perception that artificial intelligence is replacing certain jobs. So being top of mind at the right time and in the right place is going to have a more significant role than it's ever had in the past, in my opinion. As a person who has been doing career coaching as a part of her professional identity as a professor for all of the 20 years that I was in that role, primarily I started out mentoring undergraduate students, actually high school students who wanted to go to elite universities, and then undergraduate students, and then graduate students, then doctoral students, then junior, then part-time contract faculty, and then tenure track faculty. So my own experience with coaching, I'll be honest with you, I take mentoring very seriously. And I want to talk a little bit specifically tonight also about um, mentoring versus allyship, mentors versus allies versus sponsors versus friends. And let me also back up to tell you a little bit about how I came up with this topic this week. So one of the business coaches that I have, I think I've mentioned her before. I'm sorry, I forgot I was supposed to go to see if YouTube was actually I'm on my phone. Just if you see me look, I have notes over here, and then I want to just make sure I'm actually. Um, let's see, how do we do this? Here we go. I have to log in as another account to be able to see what I want to see. There we go. All right. It's working. So apologize for that. I'm still fighting the cold that I came back from Florida with. I actually feel better than I felt in 2 weeks. But when I talk, I find that my throat gets a little bit agitated. So you might experience a little shifting from the hot tea to the cold water to keep my vocal cords lubricated. So tonight's topic was inspired by a column in Reddit called Career Advice. And my business coach, Dr. Sade Adu, talks often. She is a coach for online businesses and designing digital products, amongst other things. But that's what I have been working with her for. But one of the things that she taught me is the importance of understanding your ideal client, as many people do, but where to go to find out what your ideal client's problems are. And Reddit was something that I've always been curious about and I've never really understood. So I've been on Reddit like 7 days. But I love advice columns. I don't know if you all remember, but I was raised back in the day where Dear Abby was a thing back before there was cable and all of that. Dear Abby columns, I think as a teenager, was something I always found interesting. And there was another one, I think like the Emily Post advice columns about how to, behave in certain social situations. So people basically post to a group of career coaches that moderate the chat, and other people who are interested in career advice information, read and follow in and chime in. So there's always a lot of redundant questions, things that, obviously are shared very frequently. So it can be a little bit annoying. But this one was a really good question. So this question was really about a person who was a mid-career person, which I would say my audience is generally people over 40 who've been in their profession 10 years. They're leaders. They're, basically rock stars. They're doing all the things. They've done all the things. And, basically trying to still be ambitious and successful in their careers and looking for that next frontier. They also are people who are mid-career who feel stuck and somewhat stagnated and like they're not appreciated for what they've done. And I would say that these two things can go on hand in hand, that you can feel stuck and stagnated and confused about what to do next. Or maybe you know what to do next, but maybe you don't necessarily feel confident enough to take the risk to plunge into that. Or they can be very decisive and strategic on what they need to do to get to the next step, but still want advice about it. So this person was a mid-career professional. She was a woman of color, and she had an experience at a previous employer where she had been burned by a mentoring relationship. And so she gets into this new environment, and someone immediately steps foot and shows themselves worthy and interested in her career, her goals, and making sure that she has access to the right rooms, the right people, and understands some of the nuances of their culture at that workplace. And as they proceeded to go through a variety of complex challenges at work, found themselves more in the friend territory than in the mentor ally territory. And this woman or professional was feeling very conflicted about some of the personal ways that their relationship was blending, and was seeking advice about, like, am I, being a little too sensitive? Should I, I don't know anybody for example, in this town. I've relocated. I don't remember if she said that. I'm just using that as an example. Should I, engage with her on a social level outside of work? And the interesting thing, the audience that responded was also very mixed. People often see the world and their careers through the impact of their own past experiences. As a person who spent 17 years in one institution, 2 colleges, which are kind of like in different buildings at that same, I would say, small regional institution, I could say that I saw this in both ways. And so that's really what got me. Actually, one of the pillars of the Lead and Liberate framework, which is the membership program that I've started, talks about building a supportive network. So it was always on my agenda to talk about building a supportive network. I also have a very diverse group of students that I have mentored throughout their careers, and also have crossed that line where they are dear friends now. I also have received mentoring from two people who have been dear friends, and who I would say are also friends. So I feel really basically competent to answer this question. And I can say that I have personally, I've handled it well, and I've also handled it not so well. When the work, colleague, mentor, ally, friend roles begin to blend, right? And I've also think I've navigated that very successfully. Or I think for me, it's been easier when I have been the mentor or the person who's in that position of power, or at least when we started the relationship, I was in the position of power. I am a person who's willing to kind of check in with people and see how they're feeling, and say, well, I appreciate that. For example, I remember a student who graduated, who was an alumni, invited me to her wedding because she felt like I, done so much to, I guess basically help her navigate some things that I won't go into. But I really felt like that was not the type of relationship that we would have going forward. And I didn't feel comfortable attending the wedding. Although honestly, a part of me was very, very curious and really wanted to go to the wedding. And this was early in my teaching career. And it was probably the first time that I recognized that I had to do what was going to be long-term in the best interest of the students. And I'm not saying for other people and other times, it might not be completely appropriate for your professor / mentor to attend a significant life stage family event. So that being said, years down the road, we have continued to have kind of like an internet, because of the internet and how it's evolved, we continue to have sort of a LinkedIn type relationship. So I do think it's important for you to be very honest with yourself, whether you are the mentor or the mentee, on what you need to get out of that relationship. So anyway, that's a little bit about what I have planned for today. And I know I've already been talking for 10 minutes. So I want to talk about what are actually in my planned notes. So if you are watching this and you're popping in the room, I appreciate if you say hello in the comments. And that's the only way I'm going to know actually who's watching, because I'm on a third-party site, live streaming tonight, which I'm excited about being able to do. So if you are feeling a little bit, undecided or stagnated or stuck in your career, and you're wondering what are some things that you can do to kind of basically shake yourself out of it, or maybe you're in a great place in your career, but you have further you want to go, and you're trying to figure out, okay, what are some strategies I can use to get to that next level? Assuming you're going to do all the things you're supposed to do, go to work, be responsible, meet deadlines, build your skill, upskilling. I don't know if that's a word. I like the word up leveling, but I know upskilling is also a word that I've seen a lot on LinkedIn. I know that those things to do if you're a mid-career professional, you're not new. And so you've read all the things. So what I like to think of my coaching practice is for people who, okay, I've done all the things I've been told to do, but what are some things that maybe I'm not sure I should do, or that require a little bit more risk or a little bit more investment? So, and sometimes that investment is in your mindset and in your own checking your own belief systems about what you deserve. I don't necessarily, oh, I don't want to say that. I was going to say, I don't necessarily believe that the mindset coaching business is 100% of the story, but I do think that there are some instances where you do have to check in with yourself and say, is this a mindset issue, so that we can work differently, right? There's a different set of strategies where fear is a part of that. And as a person who's historically struggled with a lot of, I would say, there's a name for it, situational anxieties. For example, I don't like bridges at all. Anybody who knows me, who's ever been in a car with me, it's one of the reasons I don't do road trips. If we find ourselves on a bridge, I'm gonna need a moment of deep prayer and concentration, eyes closed. So So as someone who understands the powerful impact of anxiety, I can say that if what is stopping you from, I don't know, going back to school, contacting your dissertation coach, advisor, because you know you've dropped the ball again. I have, I got the T-shirt and the mug from that experience as well. The reality is, there comes a point where the only way to move forward is to move forward, right? So that's a different set of coaching skills than the types of stuff that I really am talking about here. And so the secret to career growth is that you got to pay attention to your network. You got to invest in your network. The key to professional growth for mid-career professionals is to recognize is that you still need mentors. You may need those mentors that you started with. You maybe have dropped off with contacting them. Having a mentor, I'm going to start with mentors, is really key because it gives you that clarity and that confirmation on your career goals. So, for example, when I first decided that I was not going to get what I needed from my current department, I started putting feelers out about leaving the organization. And one of the people that I shared that with, who is a person to this day that I have a great deal of trust, I'm actually not going to say her name and put her on blast because, small university. I really appreciated her confirmation of the fact that what I felt like I was experiencing was in fact what I was experiencing, and that there were ways that I could not validate, but I could basically create confirmation, formal confirmation, that I was not going to get the opportunities to do the things that I had been promised. So I don't want to that's a whole episode right there by itself. So I did those things. And in fact, the person who did agree that I wasn't going to get that opportunity, the person that was in a position to give me the opportunity did say some things that let me know in my spirit it was right. I was one of those people that was always giving 150% and didn't really want to leave because I liked my students, I liked what I was teaching, but I was not willing to work for that pay status. I feel like I had done too much to work and stay at that same pay status. So I was literally stagnated, not feeling stagnated, but literally being stagnated. So the glass ceiling and cliff was impacting me. So as a result, I did a series of things that actually, once I had made up my mind that I needed to do those things, like it seemed like the fear dissipated. And so sometimes mentors see things in the world that you're not willing to admit to yourself. So they can help you see that the career goal that you set for yourself is something you deserve, something that's achievable. They can give you example after example of why that thing is attainable, is achievable, and tell you ways that other people have maybe done it or who to talk to get that information. So I think that it becomes more tricky to find mentors you can trust as you elevate in your career and as you become a person that's respected and has a reputation and has experience. Because sometimes, people aren't necessarily in it for you. They're mentoring the low hanging fruit, the easy person, the person who doesn't know anything, doesn't know anybody, and I enjoy mentoring new people too. No shade to that. The mentor, when you're a mid-career professional, also helps you recognize that there is a growth opportunity, that you aren't going to get where you want to go because you need to do something. And I have been a mentor, I believe, where I've had to do that. And honestly, I think I'm a mentor who really authentically cares about people. So when I see that someone is not going to be able to get into graduate school because they have an issue with their writing ability, they have an issue with their lack of experience in a certain skill set that I know is on the form. If I know I'm going to have to rank you in XYZ and I know I can't say that this is a skill you have, I'm going to say, I can't write you a strong recommendation because I know this skill is important and I feel that you need more work there. And then you can go fix that and we can continue to be in conversation about it. So that's the way I mentored my graduate students and and people whose doctoral dissertation committees that I was on. So that's important. A mentor who really cares about you is going to tell you about the growth opportunities, and they're going to be honest with you. And what they may in fact do, if they really care about you, is say, this is what I recommend you do to address that. They're not just going to be like, oh, you're never going to be a good writer, just give up. You can't go. That's not good mentoring. they're going to offer you insights about other people who've been there and what they've been doing. So there are a couple of different ways that mentoring relationships. So I like to think of allies and mentors as there is some overlap. So you can be a mentor who is also an ally, and you can be a mentor who is not an ally. And what I mean by that is you can be in a formal mentoring program where you're responsible for checking in with somebody and creating an environment where they're going to be able to thrive and grow and be, retained as an effective employee in whatever skill sets they have. But I think an ally implies something different, and a sponsor applies something different. I'm going to throw that word in as well. So there's an article about mentoring undergraduate students and graduate students in science education that I often relied on, that recently has come up again in the literature. And so I want to use some of the metaphors that come from that particular research article. And I am going to make the link available in the notes in case anybody cares. So, but it's talking about mentoring people in an academic situation. And a lot of my audience includes people who are teaching in higher education, not necessarily STEM, but I think this is true for anything. Anybody who's responsible for mentoring, even in business, that these all apply. So there's the gardener, there's the teacher, and there's the bridge builder. So as formal mentors, you can be compared to a gardener, and your primary purpose is to promote the mentee's growth and development. You know what? I think I wrote some of these down. Let's see if I did. Nope, I do have some quotes to show you, but this isn't one of them. Okay, so this particular mentor focuses on the good conditions for growth and learning, but at the same time is taking care of the process, making sure that you're providing the nutrients that person needs to grow and develop. So in a formal mentoring program, for example, for new faculty, ideally the university has a system where they go to trainings. They maybe are in a group where they meet once a quarter, once a semester, once a month, whatever. There may be assigned a person that they can reach out to ask questions to. Perhaps there is a peer mentoring cohort level system that goes on. But being the gardener, that's the person who puts the system together and makes sure that the people in the system have their needs met. And that might be providing workshops, providing tithes, providing a room, a space. And if you are at an administrative level, like a dean or somewhere in the dean's office, then you're going to know that those formal systems exist. So that's an important, I think, building block to good mentoring in any healthy system. And those mentors are going to be able to, even if they're just doing their job. Now, sometimes people are told that they need to be a mentor to check a box because their own growth and development shows that they're lacking in that area. And I think that's the worst. That's a sign of a very sad, dysfunctional system. Those mentors may or may not be able to grow themselves into a place where they can be effective gardeners. But then there's also the teacher. A lot of times they can be teachers. So the teacher mentor is more an example of someone. I'm not talking about somebody who's paid to teach a course where there's students in their course and they're kind of mentoring that course. Although I guess that could technically fit. I'm talking about the mentor, formal or informal, that For example, I was in a meeting one time where someone asked me about qualitative research skills because I was presenting qualitative research. And I said to them in the meeting, I said, well, I actually just play a qualitative researcher on TV, but it's really a dream of mine to be equally skilled in qualitative and quantitative research. I was trained in quantitative research at one of the top universities in the country with one of the people who wrote the textbook for quantitative psychological research. However, because my research always involved people of color who like to talk and who like to share, I always felt like you didn't get enough of the story just being a quantitative research. So I dabbled in qualitative research. As a result of that, someone who was good at qualitative research came to me, and I wouldn't necessarily say that they weren't. Sometimes people have, I don't know, like a spirit of mentoring. Like they hear someone say something and they want to be helpful, right? So they make great mentors. So that's a good example of a situation where if was in need of a mentor, I could go to that person and say, that tip or that suggestion you gave me in last week's meeting was really helpful. I would love to set up a meeting to have coffee with you and talk with you more specifically about, my career and some of the skills I'm trying, and just to get your feedback. If they're too busy and they're not interested, they'll tell you. If they say, yeah, sure, I wouldn't mind doing that. Let's do that. So some of the mentors that have been really helpful to me, honestly, have been more teacher mentors. And so I have like my inner circle core mentors, but I also have been, I think, very much impacted in a significant way by teacher mentors. So I did what that person said. I went back to my office and I sent an email to person X and said, I was just in a meeting and your name came up. Professor Y says this is a passion of yours, and I'm interested in learning more about this specific aspect of applying this specific set of techniques for my next research project. I would love to talk to you and see, like, is there some way that I could shadow you or work with you on a project so that I could get some of the practical ins and out about like how to use this particular software for a project that I have in mind. And or maybe I'll find out it's not a fit, maybe. But I think if I could work with you or shadow you, I just want to add value. I don't want to be in your way. I know you're busy. And that person was very, very helpful. They were very humble. And they said, I actually do use that software. I've used it twice. I don't feel like I'm skilled enough to really help you with what you want. But, I'm happy to, share some data with you, share the results of how I've analyzed it and, just get you to take a look at it and give me your feedback, ask questions. Maybe it'll help you figure out like what to do next. So at the end of the day, a teacher mentor is a person who has a specific skill set or knowledge, and they create the task for the person, the mentee, to be able to learn based on the need or the request. So they're not necessarily helping you with all the things, but in that one specific thing that they're an expert in, they are creating a task or a set of tasks or a program or a way in which you can work with them or maybe even collaborate with them to become effective. And then lastly, the bridge builder. The bridge builder is a person who unites people to take them past an obstacle and make it possible for them to be able to see reality. And I was mentioning this a little bit earlier. So I would say in the general sense of mentoring, one of the resources that mentors provide is social capital. And this is where, in my opinion, we get to allyship. And allyship is basically a person who's willing to use their power and influence in their social capital to oftentimes, in the formal sense, correct an injustice or address a systemic issue. So they're not just telling you how to do the strategy, which I would say is more general mentoring. They're basically saying, yes, this happened. I don't think this is fair. And this is what we are going to do about it. So they're almost like a co-conspirator. I would say in an extreme sense, not in a healthy extreme sense, an ally is a person who's going to fight the charge alongside you. They're going to use their influence. They're basically taking a risk and they have skin in the game. So they're uniting people, putting people together to take them past the obstacle so that they can then access whatever, the system is. So that's basically what I want you to think about. And if you have a mentor or an ally that has been very impactful to your career, I would love for you to say something, to write something in the chat so that I can see what your thoughts are. Marissa's here. She says, hi. Marissa talks about, so Marissa Price Heals has a wonderful channel. She does a lot of talking, particularly about toxic workplaces. And I love her channel. I have learned and really felt validated and seen by so many of the guests that she's interviewed. She's also, I would say, for me, like a role model. And when I watch one of her interviews, I say, when I grew up, I'm going to interview people like Marissa. So she's I think a clinician by training. So that means she also has a lot of insight when it comes to reading people and navigating the conversation. So I appreciate you for joining us tonight. So the next thing I want to talk briefly about is building a supportive network. Why do you need a network? If you're mid-career, you're 10 years in, you probably already got maybe 1 or 2 promotions. If you want to expand beyond your current role, if you're feeling stuck or boxed in, which is how I felt when I was, I think, 7 years in my first role as a full-time senior lecturer, I knew that I couldn't even get any more pay raises. So that's why I felt really sort of stagnant and boxed in. The thought that I would have to live off of that salary forever, only getting maybe a 1 or 2% cost of living raise, was driving me crazy as a person who needed to provide for a family. So this type of stage in your career also means that you need a support network. I mean, as a woman of color in the workplace, any workplace, whether it's education or not, and even in business as an entrepreneur, if you have been at it 5 to 7 to 10 years, the landscape is changing. And so being able to check in with mentors that maybe you haven't talked to in a while is an important leverage. It also is going to give you access to resources. You're going to be able to perhaps find a collaborator that you hadn't thought of. You're going to find access to, maybe in our case as academics, a grant that you didn't know about. Sometimes people will reach out to me on LinkedIn just because I saw their face. And sometimes they don't have to reach out to me. This is why I think also LinkedIn is a really powerful place, is they will just show up because they posted something, that something happened. And it'll occur to me, oh, I know who needs to talk to this person. I know someone who would be good with this person. And just to being able to use my network to put people together makes me excited. It makes me think about sort of like the exponential power of positive networking. When you put two people together, I feel like you're investing in both of them. And when they get together and become collaborators or friends or resources or mentors, sometimes you also reach the point where you have mentored a person as much as you have capacity. I don't want to say, yeah. So you're sort of at the outer edges of your capacity. But for example, the only example I can think about this is, in higher ed, we're kind of segregated from K through 12. Some of my best friends used to be K through 12 educators, but it's like we're in wars in different countries, sort of. So I had a student who had a really strong desire to be a school counselor in a middle school. And she was an interdisciplinary studies student. I had written a letter of recommendation for her to get in a grad program. She had a great grad program, but she needed to do like an internship or something. And so I didn't know how to help her to get that. But I said, what I will do is I will put out a call on my LinkedIn page and say, hey, I have a phenomenal student, brilliant person, wonderful person of integrity, hard worker, just been accepted to graduate school, but she's going to need an internship, or I don't think it was even called an internship, maybe a practicum, I don't know, but it was something where she needed to shadow somebody. That part I knew, for a number of hours. And ideally, it could then turn into an internship or something like that later. And so I just put it out there because I have a very deep, wide network on LinkedIn, because I've been teaching a career planning and decision-making course for like 10 years. And every semester when I teach that, and even when I'm not teaching it, people will reach out and say, hey, I'm looking for, and I will help them. So I did that for her. And sure enough, we found somebody who knew somebody who was a principal at a school who said, it's a very under-resourced school. It's in this part of town, wasn't going to be convenient to get to. I said, listen, she's, if you give me the name, I promise you will not be disappointed. You can talk to her yourself. You can introduce them. And sure enough, it ended up being a phenomenal experience for her. She basically sort of shadowed and understudied this person and did do sort of like a non-academic credit internship. And the reason I say that is that even if you're in your career and in your field and you've been in it for a while, there's always going to be something you need to learn. I mean, that's just the way the world works now. The way the world works now is you can't be sitting still. I embrace ease and the soft life, and I believe in building our legacy, and that we're not supposed to be overworking, and that we are supposed to lean into our giftings, and we are supposed to lean into our skills. But I will be very honest with you. We also have to be smart about making sure that these things that are being thrown around, that we at least can be in the conversation. We can be in the conversation enough to say, I need to learn more. I mean, that's how I felt about AI. 4 years ago, when I first started hearing about AI in education, I literally was in meetings where people were, mentally doing this. Like, I don't want to hear about it. I'm going to retire. I don't need to know about it. Same thing with online teaching. 15 years ago, when I entered higher education, I was literally, I think one of the reasons I was hired is somebody asked me about online teaching. I said, I have never taught online, but I've had online courses. And I can tell you that I have a long list of things that I would never do if I was an online instructor. But because I was open to it and I was excited to take on the challenge, I think that was how I got that was one of the reasons. I mean, they also needed somebody, but I think, and I met all the qualifications. So I don't want to say that that's enough, but I think because I had that intellectual curiosity and that willingness to learn whatever I needed to learn to be able to teach an online course, it made me shine in the applicant pool after I made it to in the introduction stage. So building a supportive network then looked like I actually found out who was the what do they have these awards? It's not like best teacher, teacher of the year. Yeah, it is. It's like teacher of the year, professor of the year, something like that. I met this woman and in passing, someone says, "Oh, she had won teacher, professor of the year like more times than anybody in the history of the institution. And at that time, the institution was 40 years old and she had won it 5 times. And she had been there maybe 20 years so 5 out of 20 years. And she basically was like, please stop giving it to me. Just because she would get nominated, she would get all the votes. So I respected that. And I said, I want to learn what she's doing. So I think building your supportive network is also about knowing what are the skills and competencies that I need at the next level. What are the skills and competencies that maybe I don't want to get, but I want to be able to have an intelligent conversation about? I want to be able to be in the room and know what's going on. So maybe it means you start reading articles and LinkedIn. It does not mean, and I'm going to be a little biased here, is, it does not mean you go to ChatGPT and Google and get the answer. I mean, that can be a start. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that as a start, but I think we give these predictive analytic devices too much credit when we let them shape our understanding. That should be the beginning and not the end of your inquiry, because there's so many other better, more comprehensive and thorough places to get information. Now, if your expertise is in prompt generation and you can write a prompt in such a way, but what we don't want to do is go to ChatGPT, which is what was happening at the time, and say, what is artificial intelligence? And then come to a meeting and talk about how it's terrible and how it's, going to ruin the world or whatever. So I have been in this point in my sabbatical where I've been working on my original goal was to become fluent in Spanish. And I now have studied Spanish long enough, 3 years, to know that fluency might not be a realistic goal, because I also want to learn French and Portuguese. However, I was willing to be embarrassed and to walk all over Spain for 2.5 months with my intermediate raggedy Spanish. Bad grammar, bad pronunciation. And bless their hearts, people would correct me and I would just love it. And I would be like, no, I'm so glad you did. Please, please, please. I really am here to learn. I came here because I want to get better. And I'm going to do the same thing in Central America when I get to Central America. So building a supportive network means finding out who are the people that can teach you what you need and how to get there at your next level. And when you get to your mid-career and you're trying to get really high up to a higher level in your career, it's going to be important to have people in your network that have been there and done that. I mean, you're going to want a sampling of people, right, who have had those experiences. Lastly, it's important because you need a safety net. There's so much volatility. One of the other things that's really important now is that you can't put all your eggs in one basket. I firmly believe in having 7 income streams. And one of the reasons why I thought for me it was important to early retire is that I knew once I started collecting a pension, that would be one check until I died. And so that's one stream down. And so any other bits of income, digital products, public speaking, YouTube monetization, if that's out there in the cards for me one day, these are all little pots of money, real estate investment, events, all these things are different ways that I will have to up level or upskill, if I want to reach my goal of having 7 streams of income. So right now I'm focusing on 2 new streams of income now that I have 1 on lock. And so this time next year, I will have 3 streams of income. And I think that's important. And so I'm looking at people, like another thing that I'm noticing as I'm part of these groups with other people who are building content on the internet, is that it's really important to understand not just what is the content that you're creating, but what are the services that support that. So as a career coach, not only am I here to teach you things that I think might be helpful for you, but I'm also here to make sure that I'm keep reminding the world, the internet world, that I'm a career coach and I've got 20 years doing it. And I would love to be your career coach. I'm the type of career coach that only takes 2 to 3 clients per semester. And I've been that way. I'm not even teaching anymore. And I still think it's really important, whether you meet with them weekly or monthly or whatever, if you're really going to be the type of advocate and ally for them, that you are realistic about the workload. So I'm not a McDonald's. I'm more of a I don't know, boutique career coach. You're not going to have trouble getting an appointment with me because I'm never going to have more than 3 people at a time. And I also prefer to have people in different career stages at the same time. And so, talking about my services, if you're a freelancer, talking about your freelance business and other skills that you have is going to be also really important. So, the last thing I want to talk about is things to build, maintain, and avoid when it comes to mentoring. So, one is being able to attend industry events and conferences. I think that is a place where you can get a brand new, fresh breath of air. So, as a person who was in Chicago, I attended the Midwest Psychological Association meeting something like 15 years. I think I missed two. The pandemic was the pandemic year and that year after that. And I think I actually was there, but I only attended virtually, so it didn't feel like I was there. I had a group of students who presented virtually that year. The American Psychological Association, when I was a grad student, we were paid or reimbursed or supported to be able to go there. I was in grad school, truth be told. Instead of 5 years, I was in grad school 7 years. I was supposed to finish my dissertation in 1 year, and I didn't. So because of that, I went 7 years. I was like, you're going to support me to go? I'm going. So, and I learned so much. And so many of the people that I know who are psychologists at various points of their career, I've looked at what they've been able to do when they got my age or once they had 20 years and the types of things they got invested in. And I just really felt like, that wasn't me. That wasn't me, the true nature of how I wanted to spend my third chapter, golden years. That's the years between 50 and 75 is your third chapter. That's what I mean. And so attending industry events and conferences, staying active on LinkedIn. I've already talked a lot about that. Even if you're just going to check in once a week to read posts, comment, and, share, repost occasionally. If you think it would be helpful for me to do a special masterclass or workshop on LinkedIn, whether you're watching on the replay or now, please tell me that in the comments if you think that would be helpful. There are some folks that are doing it, but I haven't seen anybody do it with all the nuances that I think are unique to academic careers or higher education careers, whether it's faculty or administration. Please be authentic and offer to help. If someone needs advice or someone says something, maybe you have a difference of opinion, you want to just, there's always a way to share what you want, what you need to share in a way that is professional. Avoid being transactional. Avoid being a lurker. Like there are folks who I know have been watching my content, not on this platform, but on other platforms, literally for years, and they've never done more than hit a like. There are people who are potentially would reach out when they need something, but other than that, you won't hear from them. I try to avoid those types of relationships for myself, and I definitely try to avoid being that kind of person. But I mean, I think there are times when, maybe it's necessary, but if it is after that transactional relationship, you want to make sure that after that you're pouring in and making deposits into that relationship. And then absolutely neglecting your network. One of the things that I recognize as a retiree and as a person who's, promoting a new business or a new service and a YouTube channel and a podcast, I think it's really important for me to pull way back to my original network. So I decided a few weeks ago, New Year's, intentions, right, to pick up those relationships. And so I reached out to somebody who I was so super close with as a peer and a colleague when I was in college. So we're talking 35 years ago. And sure enough, that person said, yeah, let's connect. And we live sort of in the same state now. And so I finally was able to touch bases and have a phone call with this person. And as we were talking about our families and our goals and our travel and New Year's and the holidays and all that stuff, at the end of the call, something said to me, because I actually didn't have in mind that I had a specific request. My intention was to get better acquainted with what my colleagues from undergrad were currently doing in their careers, because we're all at this sort of same, age and point, upper 50s. And I knew this guy was brilliant, and I knew he was still brilliant, and I knew he was doing a lot of amazing things. And out of the last minute, I said, I just thought about something. I'm working on something that I think I should invite you to hear more about and to get your perspective, because I mean, we're in completely different disciplines and industries. And he immediately said, yeah, I would love to hear more about that. Okay, when I get back from my next trip, da 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 da, let's put something on the calendar and let's talk about it. And like I said, we had already been on the phone 20, 25 minutes, and I really was interested because I knew this person was also a traveler. And as you know, you all know, I'm on sabbatical, so I've done a lot international travel in 2024, and we'll be doing more in 2025. And so that was, if there was a transaction that was on my mind, it was to get an idea from this person, where are the places you've traveled that you feel like Black professionals have been treated well, and that you would go back to, what's on your bucket list that you still haven't done, and just kind of have one of those like travel story conversations. And lo and behold, I believe that this person is going to be also, that we're going to be able to support each other and collaborate on some other things that I would have never thought that we could down the road. So I just want to say that one of the mistakes to avoid is, if you're going to pick up the phone and call somebody you haven't talked to, but 4 times in 25 years, make sure you're not being transactional. Don't neglect your network. Once you have a network with someone, I think it's important to stay in touch with them once a quarter. I think you should send them an email or a text or whatever your normal, method of communication is, and say, hey, I just did such and such thing. Just want to let you know I was thinking about you because of, blah, 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 blah. And then when they respond, it doesn't mean you have to have a meeting with them once a year or once a quarter. It just means that you're going to reach out and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. I appreciate when students reach out to me. I have a couple of students that for years, they will reach out to me for some reason on Mother's Day or Christmas or Happy New Year. And I think it's cool, but I'm like, this is like, it's happened now, like maybe 4 or 5 years in a row. So I almost expect it. So I guess the main thing I want to say, that the thing to avoid besides completely neglecting your network is to not have a savior complex. Really value people's time. And if they take time getting back with you, always be gracious and appreciative with whatever time they can give you. I have reached out for people intentionally for a business connection and had them tell me that they couldn't talk to me for weeks. And I always make sure that I might actually be, disappointed. But what I try to do is to work on saying, oh, I know you're so busy. I'm so grateful. I will definitely reach out with you maybe a day or two before that date and see if we can, confirm a time. And thank you so much. And, happy holidays, or, whatever, the closing is. So my conclusion today is that the one growth strategy that you might be underestimating and you might not be leveraging is taking a close look at your support network. Who are your mentors? Who are your allies? And I didn't talk about sponsors. I'll have to bring this up in a future video. If you want to hear more about my thoughts on sponsorship, I try really hard to end in under an hour. Basically, a sponsor is a person who's willing to loan you their clout. An ally might say, I'm going to go with you to fight this battle. A sponsor might take the battle away. And I have 2 great stories that one day I'm going to put in blog posts about a situation where I had a need for a sponsor and I was planning to go into battle alone. I basically, well, let me just give you the 10-second version. I brought this issue to a mentor's attention and said, I'm really upset. This is what I'm going to do about it. And they were very gracious. And I later found out that when I went to do what I said I was going to do, that out of the blue, the whole issue was gone and over. And so I didn't, so in that moment, I found out that the issue was gone and I was going to be able to do what I was trying to do that someone was preventing me from doing. Years later, I found out that my mentor had picked up the phone and told his administrative assistant to make sure that something happened, that the thing that the person was the reason I couldn't do whatever the thing was, whatever they were complaining about, basically they made that possible. So a sponsor is a person who uses their own credibility, clout, money, whatever, access to literally obliterate the barrier. And so it's not always money. Sometimes it's other types of capital. So that's just to kind of whet your curiosity. So that's what I mean by Spencer. So it's like an even more niche way of being an ally. However, it might not be a person that you have access to on a quarterly basis. It often is a person that has significant, in my opinion, it's a person who has significantly more power than you do. Whereas the mentor might be 1 or 2 levels above you. But you never know where people that you know at this level were down, years later, they've gone, 7 layers, 7 levels up, and you've been moving too. So, you just want to be very strategic about that. So I was really grateful for that. So I had a mentor in undergrad. So the last thing I want to close with is this thing about friends. So one of my first mentors when I became a doctoral student was Dr. San Stevens. She's a board certified clinical psychologist in Florida. And I actually stayed in her apartment. We were in one of those formal programs where, there weren't a lot of Black women, but anyway, she was the one Black woman from her year, and I was the one Black woman from my year. And so you were supposed to stay with an upperclassman's, another doctoral student who was further in the program. And long story short, so not only was she my mentor in a formal way, she became my mentor in an informal way, and she's also become a very close friend. Now, mind you, I was in the class of 2010, and I think she was in the class of 2004. She was graduating shortly after I arrived at the University of Notre Dame, and I'm really grateful for her friendship. But our relationship has kind of ebbed and flowed. We've done colleagues together. We've been colleagues writing together, presenting together, conducting research together, applying for grants together. I have students that I mentored who became her mentees when I left certain projects. And not only am I really proud of everything she's done with her career in the last, 20 years, I'm really proud of how we've been able to stay close, not consecutive. So we haven't been in touch every quarter for, 2004 to 20 years, 20 years, basically. It'll be 20 years this May, that this coming year that we met. But I do think friends is when you have an equal power dynamic. I think it's really important to say that. I realize that I never put any of the banners up here that I quote that. So I'm going to just put them all up now. So these were what I was supposed to put up when I had the allyship. So being an ally is about listening without judgment, speaking up against injustice when uncomfortable, and using your position to uplift and support those without the same power dynamic. So the difference between an ally and a friendship, to go back to the original post on Reddit, you can't really be friends if there's a power differential. Friends are more on an equal footing. And then one of my other favorite quotes, I'm not really sure who said it, but the person who, I don't know, Google attributed it to, is a post on LinkedIn by an author, Ruchika Malhotra. And she wrote a really good DEI book called Inclusion on Purpose. She's a business person. Ally is a verb, not a noun. And so I've seen that a lot of t-shirts not attributed to anybody. So the last quote that I wanted to share is being an ally can't be just about nodding in agreement. I had to shorten it because there's a limit to how many characters you have. Can't be about nodding in agreement when someone says something we agree with. It also is about action. It's our job to stand out for those who aren't at the table when a life-altering decision is being made. And this is an excerpt from a Kamala Harris quote. So I just wanted to share those in light of what a friend would do, because a friend may also sometimes mentor you, may also sometimes be an ally and go with you, to do the thing. But a friend is also probably not in a position to be a sponsor, but maybe sometimes they are. I mean, your friend hits the lottery and she says, I'm taking my whole family on a cruise and we've been friends for 20 years. And so I want you and your family to all go on the cruise with us because now I have money like that. I don't know. So maybe a friend can be a sponsor. But I do really want to hear from you to get your feedback on this topic. And if this content has been helpful, please remember, I never put this up. Remember to like the video if you're enjoying this content, and please support the channel by becoming a subscriber. I really appreciate that. It helps the YouTube algorithm help my growing channel to continue to get in the eyes of other leaders in not just higher education, but other professionals, women, people of color, who would appreciate seeing someone who has similar experiences to them talk about these issues, because there are lots of career coaches actually on all the social media channels and outlets. But sometimes we have a unique perspective and we have to share our perspective, even if it seems like people that are covering these same topics, because we're coming at it from a different vantage point. But I have really enjoyed this time, and I'm going to go support some other people who have live streams that are starting tonight. And I am also working on turning my 2 past workshops about vision boarding and setting intentions and goals for your career. And the other one is the long game, building your legacy, into digital products that I'm going to make available in February. So look forward to that. And thank you again, and take care.